Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Good. We're about to talk about the discovery, the unbelievable discovery that some people in government have been there, and they've been, by current measurements, very successful. And now we hear that some of them tell lies and they fib and they cheat. And we've been looking around for somebody to balance that out, but that's hard to do. But you know, we're going to be talking about John Kerry, and he has some shortcomings, and we want to talk about that. But before I do that, I want to just mention a few problems that we have in the world today. You know, we have Lebanon war exploding, going to probably get worse. We're planning on sending more troops over there, and we already sent all the bombs that does the killing. And also, there's a strike pending in this country, a huge strike, which could be devastating. And it's all financed by just printing up the money. And yet, you know, you look at the markets and they don't even seem to be concerned. Whether you look at the gold market, the stocks are booming. But I'll tell you what, this boom is going to be hard to stop unless by the end of the day we have a different opinion. But it's amazing the amount of problems. But what we want to talk about is John Kerry and his attitude toward telling the truth and why he's important, and you and I and the Liberty Report is not. I would think he probably doesn't know who and what the Liberty Report is all about. But from what I read, he would not like us. You know, he wouldn't. He would think that that's interfering. It's interfering with the government. He doesn't want the First Amendment because he literally says it interferes with the operation of the government. Well, what does the government do? Oh, they make us safe, and they protect our liberties, and they take care of us. They give us prosperity. They take care of our monetary system, and they make sure everybody's peaceful and happy. And we stay out of the business of the people. We stay out of the business of other countries. And he would say, oh, well, you just have to obey what we do because we know you guys wouldn't know what to do. So therefore, that's why we offer our service. You know, the John Kerrys of the world, they're numerous, and they tend to gravitate in one particular party. But the principle of lying and fizzing and propagandizing, I think it belongs universally to most politicians, most not all. And there's one party that's much worse than the other. But that is a big deal, because if you don't understand, you know, what the governments are saying, what they're doing, and what they believe their purpose. There's such a revolution in the article we read today. Kyle Anselon did this, and it was magnificent because he does a lot of quoting of John Kerry. And John Kerry, I knew it was bad, but I never knew it was this bad. And we will talk a little bit about that. And Chris, I'm sure you took a look at his article.
Yes, it's no surprise. And more of those politicians are coming out against free speech. And we understand why. Because government always hates free speech. That's why we have the First Amendment, and that's why it's first. That's how important freedom of speech is. But our government particularly has tolerated the First Amendment because they have largely, throughout our lives, controlled all the information. You either got your information from the government-controlled schools. There were a handful of TV stations. When my parents were growing up, there were 3. That was your choice, and they told you what was going on, and that was it. And everything was uniform. So if you go to the water cooler, the guy at the water cooler saw the same thing you did. So they controlled where people get information. So they're like, yeah, talk freely amongst yourself. You're within the range that we want you in, and you had no access to other people. What did you had to mail pamphlets around to get truth out? So that was the way it worked, and the government loves it. So yeah, have your freedom of speech, but that has been broken. That has been shattered with the internet. Now people can pick and choose where they get their information, and they can block You could block the Washington Post, the New York Times, and never, for the rest of your life, read anything that they have to say. So their monopoly has been broken. Now they're scrambling because they don't control what people get. And it happens all in real time. A guy with a video camera can show you the truth faster than the government can lie to you. So they're even behind. And this is a very big problem for them. And there's always lies. So they're going to try to say, oh, well, people lie. Yeah, well, number one, they lie the most. And yes, people do lie. That's a human characteristic. It's a part of human nature. But now, for the first time, probably ever, that people have a fighting chance to get to the truth. Most will still live in a world of lies. But you just need enough people with the truth, and all the government narratives fall apart. So this is why they are scrambling. They don't know what to do. And John Kerry is the latest one that wants to curb this freedom of speech.
You know, they actually have a religious type of belief in this because it's well known that nihilism exists, and some people believe that if you believe in a higher order or natural law, there's something wrong with you. But the whole principle that they're talking about and what they're based on is that there's not that much wrong with lying. And that's why that quote has been used a long time, and I've used it frequently. Truth is treason in an empire of lies, because the empire depends on lies. Because the nature of most human beings is that they welcome government for the wrong reasons, because they're welcoming the government to solve problems the government already created. And so there's a lot of mixture, and there's a lot of need for a better understanding about what liberty is all about, and how it can be solved, and why people accept it so readily. And we have bits and pieces come and go, and people stand up to it. And we've worked hard over the last 20 years or so trying to warn people about staying out of these wars, but they keep doing it over and over again. But I think there is, as Chris points out, there's more people trying to wake up and know about this, because it can change. It can change, but it's no easy struggle. It's a lot easier starting a war or introducing a welfare state or servicing the special interests, especially in people who are dedicated and I want to adhere to pure democracy. Democracy, of course, is something. It's a danger to people, because democracy is really the promotion of the majority. The dictatorship of the majority means that you get 51% by a bunch of special interests together. Oh, we're dedicated to democracy. 51%, let's do it. Well, we believe in enslaving people. Sometimes we camouflage it. Sometimes we enslave a middle class by saying we can make them slaves by taxing them through the monetary system and call all kinds of things, but we'll always do it for their benefit, because we're always going to help them, and we'll open the door, and we will always. They'll argue they will always make sure they're safe, because people want to be safe and prosperous, so they listen to the lies, and yet I think their gut is telling them elsewhere. And I think that's the reason why we have to encourage people to speak out. There was a lot of saying, I think it was during the Goldwater campaign, they said, there are people who vote from their head, or they vote from their heart. And I've always argued they vote from their belly. I think that motivates people. And who knows? There may be. I know the immigration disaster that we have is mostly a violation of property rights, but they are also accepting the idea that people can come in and usurp what the other people are doing. So I think this is a big issue. I'm going to read the first paragraph in Kyle's article, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this. But Kyle writes, "Our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just hammer, and that is truth, out of existence. So what we need to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully winning enough votes that you'll be free and able to implement change." So in other words, put the pressure on them, and we'll give you a good tyrant, good ones and bad ones. So this is it. But this whole issue, and I've met quite a few people who were growing up and not exposed to the freedom principle, change their minds. A lot of people do. A lot of teenagers do. A lot of people 21 years old do. But Kerry, at one time in his life, he had a little bit of grasp of this because he was the victim of the draft and going to the war and all this stuff. So, but now it's different. He's in the driver's seat. He sees that people can't take care of themselves, won't take care of themselves, and spending is good and the government will solve all these problems. But that has to be ingrained for us to go so far, because it isn't just our government that has entered our citizens. It's our government that has become the most powerful empire ever, and the richest, and with the most military might. And therefore, it's endangered the whole world. And when you think about it, everything, even the havens that you go to, are measured by dollars. And all foreign currencies are measured by dollar. Of course, there's a shift there because people are getting worn out by our oppression of other countries, our military oppression, and economic oppression. So there's some good signs there, but we want to encourage those good signs to move toward this peace that we so often desire.
That's right, Dr. Paul. And they try to weasel their way by saying misinformation, disinformation. I mean, first of all, we have the freedom to consume whatever information we want, even lies. In fact, anybody watching this show now can turn it off, go turn on the television, and be bombarded with government lies. You have the freedom to do that. And they're fine with that. That's what they want you to consume. I was watching NFL yesterday. There were campaign ads over and over, and it's all lies, and I'm free to watch it and free to believe it. Now, I don't, but I can, and campaign speeches, it's the same thing. Even Donald Trump, look at his first administration, his campaign speeches compared to what happens. It wasn't true. And even if he's elected again, we'll look back in 4 years to now, and what he's saying, a lot of it isn't true. So we have the freedom to be lied to. It's part of life. There's lies everywhere. That's part of being a human being, is you, every second, either accept it or reject it, accept or reject. And it's your prerogative to make that choice, no matter where the information is coming from. The government doesn't want you having access to anything that they don't say. So they go after TikTok and Telegram and anywhere else, and they're playing whack-a-mole, just trying to suppress people talking to one another, especially if something is true. So, but there are so many people, there's 7 billion people, that they can't possibly squash everything. So it's everybody's duty, ours, yours, watching, that if you have something true, don't just keep it to yourself, speak it and let others hear it. And you're going to help save our society if you do so, because they can't possibly squash everybody. They're just going to go after who they think is more important at the moment.
In doing this, control the First Amendment is what they're doing it. And they're really not that bashful about it because they're doing the Lord's work by protecting the government, and the government's going to take care of the people. So they have convinced themselves that they're on the good side of world events, and they feel obligated. And they are punishing the people or taking care of the people. And they think they're really helping the people, but what they're doing is making things worse, because they can turn it around and say, well, if you don't vote for food stamps for the pharmaceutical companies and the military industrial complex, that you don't love America, you don't love people, and you don't love peace. And they'll go on and they live by that until they finally believe it, and it fits into their religious philosophy that they accept, and that is, in nihilism, they finally come to the conclusion, it's too complicated. We can't ever agree on what truth is. And yet there's been a basic thrust of what truth is all about for as long as there was recorded history, that you aren't supposed to lie, cheat, steal, or kill. Very basic. Thousands of years they use that. And yet right now the governments do more of that than the individuals. Yeah, we have a lot of bad people out there, and they do a lot of robbing and killing. But when you think of all the killing just in the last couple years in the Middle East, and they're all by our bombs and our effort, and it's continuous. Even right now in my opening statement, I say we're sending more troops and more bombs because we're getting ready to, advance that war in Lebanon. And it just seems to never stop. And that to me is the big problem. And and to do this, and Chris mentioned this, they want control of the media, and that's the social media, because there's a lot of information there. So every time people might crack down on one source of bad information, and they think, well, they'll agree, there is a lot of bad information, but we are going to be the judge. The nihilists want to be the judge. They know you can't know truth, but they know the truth. They're right. They're right that there's no truth. So he goes on, and yet this is not new. It's been existent. I think even before they have language and writing, people knew you weren't allowed to go and steal and kill people. There's evidence for that. So I do believe in natural law, and that people know what's right and wrong. But it seems like it's a sickness. If you get anywhere near Washington, you get infected with it, and all of a sudden you melt away, and you forgot all about the principle of truth and lies.
Very good, Dr. Paul. I will finish up with my closing statement. And what I'm going to say, some people are not going to like to hear, because we're not partisan here. We just we're committed to liberty, no matter who is in power. Now, it's obvious that if Harris wins the election, she's not going to be very good with freedom of speech. I mean, Tim Walz himself says it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Trump will be great on freedom of speech. In fact, I think he would be 1,000 times better than Harris. But if he were to get us into a big war with Iran, it would not shock me to see President Trump try to suppress any truth that comes out in that war. And it's not unprecedented. We're so used to Democrats being so against the truth coming out, but Republicans are human beings too, and they're just as bad, especially when it comes to war. You can think back to the Iraq War. You're pro-Saddam if you have anything to say about it. So you'll be pro-Ayatollah, you'll be pro-jihadi. They go after character assassination, not what you're saying, and if it's true, it's just you're pro-whatever. Republicans are just as bad. We're just, they're not as often as the Democrats, but they do the exact same thing. They gave us the Patriot Act, all the tyranny that we're dealing with, they were cheering on. So they cannot get a pass just because they're Republicans. So the bad news is that freedom of speech may be at risk no matter who wins this election. And that is terrible. But it is our duty as American citizens to defend freedom of speech no matter who is in power, whether it's Donald Trump and how much you love him and everything he's gone through. And that does not give him the right to try to suppress anything that's true said by American citizens. So we have to keep that in mind as this election happens, that this isn't just a Harris thing. This is an American principle that must be defended, always.
Great point. I talk a lot about what they shouldn't get engaged in: lie, cheating, stealing, and killing. And that would go a long way, because that would cover most of the big problems that we have, as problems of war and whatnot. But then what kind of rules would you have in a free society if we had one? What would the rules be? Well, the first thing is it's not complex on how you have relationships with anybody, because it would be very open. It would be up to two people to have relations with each other. And you disregard everything else: social attitudes, religious attitudes, sexual attitudes, as long as there is it's voluntary. And the truth is sometimes a voluntary exchange of information is not a crime. So you can't turn somebody's habits, because they aren't healthy habits, you can't turn that around and say that's a crime and we'll put you in jail. So they have to accept that, and that's not easily accepted by some people, because they figure government knows what is good and bad, and they have to have to be the referee. So they do that. So if everything is voluntary, you would rule that out as far as two people getting together and talking. If you applied that to economic freedom, that the buyer and the seller has to have an agreement. But you don't need to have prior restraint by the government to say you can't have this transaction unless you follow the regulations. And they said, well, is that complex? Oh, no, it's only 50,000 pages long. You just better not disobey because we'll punish you if you do. So it's impossible because the government makes it so that they are the dictator. And when you think about it in general, that you could do just about anything you want if it's peaceful. And being peaceful eliminates so much crime and the violence and all. But the activity that we get engaged in should be non-violent. You can't use aggression. You can't say, well, he has more than I have and he doesn't deserve it, so I'm going to take it. Oh, that'd be breaking the law. That'd be breaking the rule, but you'd break two rules. You'd break the rule of you can't steal from your neighbor, you can't hurt your neighbor, but you'd break the other rule of asking your government to do it for you. That's where the big crime is, that's where the big theft is, and that's where the big fraud is, and the counterfeiting. That's where the problem is, but there's a disconnect between a lot of people in this country follow the rules on themselves and the community and know what those rules are and understand what natural law is. But very few people understand that when you deliver that authority to government, it doesn't make it right. Governments have done a much worse job at protecting freedom because they usually use their freedom to enhance their power. And we're at the point now where that has been carried through, at least in the period of time of the last 100 years or so. It has just built, the empire's gotten bigger and bigger and richer and more people locked in to dependency on government, so they're not going to give up. So next week, we're not going to have a vote that all of a sudden we're going to work our way out of this. But there will be an opportunity because just like COVID, the mess that we had with COVID, the people finally woke up and it was finally proven that most of the mess that the so-called people who were going to keep us safe from COVID, that they missed the boat, they were wrong, they caused more deaths than they helped. A lot more. That's what the consensus is now, as far as I'm concerned, that the government didn't do any good. They say, yeah, but how are the people going to be taken care of if the government doesn't pay the bills? Well, just take a look at it right now and say, oh, we love the way medicine is carried out now and what it costs to go to the emergency room. I mean, it's just terrible. The prices are the highest. I always argue that I practiced medicine before any of the Medicare and Medicaid and all this and Obamacare that was in place. So, but doctors generally and hospitals generally charged the least amount. You know, they recognize patients might not have as much money, so they always made a point of charging less. Today, it's the opposite. The incentive is charge the most because the government is going to deduct some. So if a surgery is worth $1,000, well, I'll charge $1,500. And, you know, it goes up and up. And then for political reasons, they adapt to this. Government is not a good arbiter. They cannot arbitrate this, and they're in big trouble. So I lay the blame frequently to the people who tolerate big government to try to make them a better person and make for more peace and prosperity. Hasn't worked so well, and yet I think the majority of people still want peace and prosperity, and that's why we'll stay active at our institute here for peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.